October 12th, 1983. A cool autumn evening settles over Staten Island, the air thick with the scent of salt from the lower bay and burning leaves from distant suburbs. High on Tot Hill, the most elevated point on the entire eastern seaboard south of Maine, a brilliant white mansion stands illuminated against the twilight. Its Roman columns and sprawling lawns are a monument to wealth and power, a fortress designed to look like a palace. This is the home of Paul Castellano, the undisputed boss of the Gambino crime family, and tonight, like most nights, business is being conducted. You are inside, an unseen guest in a room where whispers carry more weight than signed contracts. The dining room is a cavern of dark wood and polished silver. A crystal chandelier, a constellation of imported light, hangs over a long mahogany table set for a dozen men. The air is heavy with the aroma of garlic, oregano, and grilled prime beef, a scent that mingles with the faint, sweet odor of expensive cigar smoke. At the head of the table sits the man they call Big Paul. He is 70 years old, a stout figure with a broad, impassive face and eyes that seem to see everything, but reveal nothing. He is dressed not in a tracksuit or a flashy suit, but in a silk smoking jacket over a crisp white shirt. He looks less like a gangster and more like a chairman of the board, which is exactly how he sees himself. He raises a glass of red wine, a vintage that costs more than a week's wages for the men who pay him tribute. "To business," he says, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. The sentiment is echoed by the men around him, a collection of capo regimes and soldiers who represent the family's vast interests. There is James Failla, Jimmy Brown, the quiet operator who controls the trash hauling industry, Joseph N. Gallo, the family consigliere, a man whose advice is valued but whose power is limited by Castellano's absolute authority. They eat their steaks, thick cuts of prime beef supplied by Dial Poultry, one of Castellano's own companies. Everything here is his. Castellano does not like the street. He despises the filth, the noise, the unpredictability of it all. He has spent years distancing himself from the dirty work, the hands-on violence that built the organization he inherited from his cousin and brother-in-law, the legendary Carlo Gambino. Paul's world is one of numbers, of percentages, of controlling unions and construction bids and pornography distribution from the sterile comfort of this mansion. He demands weekly financial reports from his capos, written on paper, a practice that makes the old-timers nervous. He has forbidden any made man in his family from dealing in narcotics, a decree he enforces not out of moral conviction, but because the drug trade brings long prison sentences and unwanted attention from the federal government. It is, in his eyes, a dirty business. Tonight, the topic is the concrete club. Castellano listens as his underlings report on their control of the city's construction trade. Any project in New York worth over $2 million has to pay a mob tax to the commission, and the Gambinos get the lion's share. Big Paul nods, slicing a piece of steak with surgical precision. He cares about the flow of money, the percentages that funnel upwards to him. He does not ask how the unions are kept in line or what happens to contractors who refuse to play by the rules. He does not want to know. That is for men like his driver and bodyguard, Thomas Bellotti, a brutish, loyal soldier who sits silently near the door, watching everyone, his hands resting on his lap, a bulge visible under his tailored jacket. But beneath the veneer of corporate order, there is dissent. You can feel it in the glances that are held a second too long, in the silences that follow a direct order. Not everyone here respects the new way of doing things. Some of the older capos, men who came up under Anastasia and Gambino, see Castellano as a greedy businessman, not a true boss. They whisper that he is isolated up here on his hill, detached from the lifeblood of the family. The real resentment, however, is brewing miles away, in the social clubs of Queens and Brooklyn, among men who see the drug trade not as a liability, but as the future. Men who see Paul Castellano as a dinosaur. The dinner ends. The capos file out, paying their respects, their cars crunching on the gravel driveway as they depart. Castellano remains at the table, alone except for Bellotti and his live-in maid, a Colombian woman named Gloria Olarte, who quietly clears the plates. He looks out the large bay window at the distant glittering lights of Manhattan, a kingdom he rules from afar. He is the CEO of Murder, Incorporated, the king in his castle. He feels secure, untouchable. He has no idea that the federal government is watching, listening, and drawing a net around his white-walled fortress. And he has no idea that the greatest threat is not from the outside, but from the ambitious, hungry wolves within his own family who are tired of eating steak and are ready for a different kind of feast. November 7th, 1983. The air in the cramped van parked a discreet distance down the hill from the White Mansion is stale, tasting of cold coffee and nervous sweat. Inside, 2 agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Gambino Squad, designated C-16, lean forward in their seats, headphones pressed tight against their ears. They are listening to the king hold court. Their window into Paul Castellano's world is not a high-powered lens or a confidential informant, but a tiny microphone, no bigger than a thumbnail, painstakingly hidden inside a white table lamp in the boss's kitchen. The lamp was a gift, delivered by a federal agent posing as a repairman. Now, it broadcasts every conversation held over coffee, every secret whispered over the kitchen table, directly to this rolling steel box. For months, the agents listen. They listen to Castellano complain about the price of chicken feed for his poultry business. They listen to him conduct sensitive business meetings, his voice a low monotone as he discusses bid rigging in the concrete industry. They listen to him argue with his mistress, Gloria Olarte, the same maid who serves his dinner. The tapes reveal a man who is meticulous, arrogant, and profoundly isolated. He speaks of his capos with disdain, calling them cowboys and knuckle-draggers. He trusts no one but Thomas Bellotti, the hulking bodyguard who rarely leaves his side. The agents log hundreds of hours of tape, slowly, patiently, building a case under the Racketeer, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations Act, a web of evidence woven from Castellano's own words. While the FBI listens on Taut Hill, a different kind of conversation is happening 20 miles away, in a dingy storefront in Ozone Park, Queens. The sign on the window reads, Bergen Hunt and Fish Club, but no one inside is talking about deer season or bass fishing. This is the den of John Gotti, a capo regime in the Gambino family. And the atmosphere here is the polar opposite of Castellano's sterile mansion. The air is thick with blue-gray cigarette smoke, the smell of cheap cologne, and the palpable energy of restless ambition. Wood-paneled walls are adorned with yellowed photographs of fishing trips and Christmas parties, but the real business happens around the card tables, over shots of bootleg anisette. John Gotti is the center of this universe. He is handsome, impeccably dressed in $1,000 Brioni suits, his silver hair swept back perfectly. He moves with a predator's confidence, his voice a charismatic bark that commands attention. He is everything Paul Castellano is not, a man of the streets, a product of the gutter, a gangster who revels in the life. His crew is a collection of killers and earners. Angelo Quack Quack Ruggiero, his childhood friend, a prolific drug trafficker with a fatal inability to keep his mouth shut, and Salvatore Sammy the Bull Gravano, a cold-blooded contractor and rising star from Brooklyn. They all chafe under Castellano's rule. They see the boss's ban on drugs not as a wise business decision, but as hypocrisy. Big Paul profits from pornography, from loan sharking, from extortion. Dirty money is dirty money. But narcotics are where the real fortunes are being made in the 1980s, and Gotti's crew is neck-deep in the heroin trade. They see the river of cash flowing up to the White Mansion on the hill, and they get only a trickle in return. He's a milkman, Gotti sneers to his men. He don't do nothing but milk the family. The one man holding the family together is Agnello Della Croce, the underboss. Mr. Neal is a gangster of the old school, revered and feared by the street crews. He is Gotti's mentor and protector. As long as Della Croce is alive, his loyalty to the Gambino hierarchy prevents any open rebellion. But Della Croce is old, ravaged by cancer, and his power is fading with his health. Gotti knows that when Mr. Neal dies, the last barrier between his ambition and Castellano's throne will be gone. Then, the FBI inadvertently lights the fuse. Agents arrest members of Gotti's crew based on evidence from another wiretap, this one in the home of Angelo Ruggiero. Ruggiero, it turns out, has been recorded for years, complaining about Castellano, insulting him, and, most damningly, discussing the details of his multi-million-dollar heroin operation in explicit detail. The federal prosecutors make it known that they have Ruggiero on tape. Word gets back to Castellano. He is furious. He demands that Ruggiero turn over the tapes so he can hear for himself if his capo has violated the family's most sacred rule. Gotti knows this is a death sentence. There is no way he can let Castellano hear those tapes. They would incriminate not just Ruggiero but his entire crew, including himself. Castellano would have no choice but to order their executions to maintain his authority. Suddenly, the whispers of dissent in the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club turn into urgent, desperate plans. The situation is no longer about greed or ambition. It is about survival. John Gotti has to kill Paul Castellano before Paul Castellano kills him. March 28th, 1985. The air inside the United States Courthouse at Foley Square in Manhattan is thick with the manufactured chill of air conditioning and the weight of history being made. Flashbulbs pop like firecrackers as a parade of aging. Well-dressed men are escorted by federal marshals into the grand, marble-walled courtroom. This is the opening act of what the press will christen the Commission Case. Rudolph Giuliani, the ambitious United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, stands before a phalanx of microphones, his voice ringing with righteous fury. He announces the indictment of the heads of New York's 5 families, the bosses of the Gambino, Genovese, Lucchese, Colombo, and Bonanno organizations. They are being charged as a board of directors, a commission that has governed organized crime in America for half a century. Paul Castellano is among them. He walks into the courtroom with a look of utter contempt, his face a stony mask. For a man who has so carefully insulated himself from the street, this is the ultimate humiliation. Being herded into a courtroom like a common thug, his name and face splashed across every newspaper and television screen, is a profound violation of his corporate ethos. He sees the case for what it is, a direct assault on his reign, built on the evidence meticulously gathered by the bugs in his own home. The indictment details his control over the concrete industry, the unions, the very lifeblood of his financial empire. He is no longer an untouchable monarch on a hill. He is defendant number 1. The case throws the Gambino family into turmoil. Castellano is distracted, forced to spend his days with lawyers, his nights worrying about the mountain of evidence against him. His authority, already questioned by the street crews, now appears fragile. He becomes more paranoid, more isolated. His trips into Manhattan for meetings are rare, his reliance on Thomas Bellotti absolute. Bellotti, a man of limited intelligence but boundless loyalty, is promoted to underboss, a move that infuriates the family's old guard. To them, Bellotti is nothing more than a driver, a bodyguard. This promotion is seen as a final, arrogant insult from a boss who has completely lost touch with his men. Meanwhile, in a hospital bed at Mary Immaculate Hospital in Queens, Agnello Della Croce is dying. The cancer has consumed him. John Gotti visits his mentor daily, watching the old warrior fade away. For Gotti, Mr. Neal's decline is both a personal sorrow and a strategic countdown. Della Croce has been his shield, the one figure powerful enough to mediate between the Gotti faction and Castellano. Gotti knows that Castellano despises him, sees him as a dangerous upstart. With Della Croce gone, there will be no one to stand in the way of a final confrontation. The demand for Angelo Ruggiero's tapes has not been forgotten. It hangs in the air, like a guillotine. On December 2nd, 1985, Agnello Della Croce dies. The news travels through the 5 boroughs like a shockwave. According to mafia tradition, the boss is expected to pay his respects by attending the wake of his underboss. It is a fundamental gesture of honor and continuity. Paul Castellano does not go. He tells his capos that he is under too much surveillance from the FBI, that his presence would turn the wake into a media circus. He sends his condolences, but he stays home in his white mansion. For John Gotti and his crew, this is the ultimate act of disrespect. It is an unforgivable offense against the memory of a man they revered. Standing outside the Scarpacci funeral home in Brooklyn, surrounded by a sea of black-clad wise guys, Gotti's face is a mask of cold fury. The whispers are no longer whispers. They are declarations. He spit on Neal's grave, one soldier mutters. He's got to go, says another. The snub galvanizes the opposition. It is the final justification they need. The plot, once a desperate contingency, now becomes an urgent necessity. Sammy Gravano, who had been hesitant, is now fully committed. He sees Castellano's absence not just as an insult, but as a sign of weakness, of a leader who is afraid to face his own men. The decision is made. The War Council convenes not in a boardroom, but in the back of a social club. The target is set. The time and place are all that remain to be decided. December 4th, 1985. The basement of a nondescript social club in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, is cold and damp. The only light comes from a single bare bulb hanging from a frayed wire, casting long, distorted shadows on the concrete walls. The air smells of damp earth, stale cigar smoke, and conspiracy. This is the war room. John Gotti is here, pacing back and forth like a caged tiger, his expensive suit looking out of place in the grime. Salvatore Gravano sits at a rickety wooden table, perfectly still, his eyes like chips of ice. He is the operation's chief architect. With them are Frank DeCicco, Angelo Ruggiero, and a handful of other trusted plotters. There is no room for doubt or hesitation. The decision has been made. Now comes the mechanics of murder. It has to be public, Gotti says, his voice a low growl that cuts through the silence. No disappearing act. No body in a trunk. The whole world has to know the king is dead, and they have to know who the new king is. This is not just an execution, it is a coup d'etat, and it requires a public stage. The biggest problem is access. Paul Castellano is a creature of habit, but those habits are centered on the fortified mansion on Tot Hill. Getting to him there is impossible. They need to lure him out into their territory, onto their terms. All eyes turn to Frank DeCicco. He is the key, their Judas. DeCicco is a respected capo, one of the few men who has the ear of both Castellano's faction and the street crews. He is their bridge into the king's court. I can get him, DeCicco says, his voice steady. He wants to meet. He wants to talk about this thing with Angelo's tapes. He wants to know what happens now that Neil is gone. It is the perfect pretext. Castellano, the corporate boss, believes he can solve this problem with a meeting, a discussion. He has no idea the verdict has already been delivered. A restaurant, Gravano says, speaking for the first time. His tone is flat, clinical. Midtown. His comfort zone. He'll feel safe there. They settle on Sparks Steakhouse on East 46th Street. It is one of Castellano's favorite spots, a place where he frequently entertains business associates. The irony is not lost on anyone in the room. He will be killed in a place that represents his own world, a world of expensive dinners and backroom deals. Gravano begins to lay out the plan with the precision of a general planning an invasion. He will be the on-site commander. He selects the hit team himself, a crew of seasoned killers. 4 shooters, he says, ticking them off on his fingers. Vincent Artuso, John Carneglia, Eddie Lino, and another guy I trust. They'll wear long white trench coats and black Russian hats, so they all look the same. Hard to identify. They will be armed with .38 caliber revolvers. No semi-automatics that would eject telltale shell casings. The weapons will be wiped clean and dropped at the scene. A second team will serve as a backup and a blocking force. Gotti and Gravano will be parked just down the street, watching everything unfold from a Lincoln Town car. They need to see it with their own eyes to confirm the kill. DeCicco will ride with Castellano to the restaurant. His job is to make sure the boss arrives at the designated time. It is a classic setup, the trusted lieutenant leading his leader into a prepared kill zone. The date is set, Monday, December 16th. Castellano is scheduled to have dinner with DeCicco and other capos at 5:30 in the evening. This gives them the cover of darkness and the chaos of rush hour in Manhattan. Gravano's shooters will be in position, blending in with the crowds of Christmas shoppers and office workers. They will wait for Castellano's black Lincoln to pull up to the curb. When he steps out of the car, they will move. There will be no warning, no final words, just a sudden brutal storm of gunfire. The meeting in the basement ends. The men filter out one by one, melting back into the Brooklyn night. The plan is in motion. Every detail has been considered, every contingency planned for. For the next 12 days, they will go about their lives as if nothing has changed, all while knowing they are about to commit the most audacious mob hit in a generation. John Gotti feels the thrill of impending victory. He is not just killing a man, he is killing an era. He is taking back the family and remaking it in his own image. In his mind, the white mansion on the hill already belongs to him. The king had 12 days left to live. December 16th, 1985. A biting cold whips through the canyons of Midtown Manhattan, carrying with it the scent of roasted chestnuts and exhaust fumes. The city is a riot of festive chaos. Christmas lights are strung across avenues, Salvation Army bells chime on street corners, and waves of shoppers, their arms laden with bags, surge along the sidewalks. It is just after 5 o'clock in the evening, and the sky is already deepened to a bruised purple. On East 46th Street, the warm golden light spilling from the windows of Sparks Steakhouse offers a promise of warmth and expensive comfort. Across the street, 4 men stand waiting. They are almost invisible, just 4 more figures bundled against the cold in the river of pedestrians. But they are different. They wear identical long white trench coats and black Russian-style fur hats. They do not speak. They are a ghost crew, a unit of executioners waiting for a signal. One of them, John Carneglia, shifts his weight from one foot to the other, his hand deep in his pocket, wrapped around the cold steel of a .38 caliber revolver. They have been in position for nearly an hour, watching, waiting, their breath pluming in the frigid air. A block away, parked near the corner of 3rd Avenue, is a dark Lincoln Town car. The engine is off. Inside, John Gotti sits in the passenger seat, staring intently through the windshield. He's wearing a black overcoat and a grim expression. The usual swagger is gone, replaced by a focused, predatory stillness. Next to him, Salvatore Gravano holds a walkie-talkie, his thumb resting on the transmit button. He has orchestrated every detail of the next few minutes. He has walked the street, timed the traffic lights, and chosen the exact spot where his men will stand. There's nothing left to do but watch. High on Tot Hill, Paul Castellano straightens his tie in front of a gilded mirror. He is dressed in a dark, impeccably tailored business suit. He is preparing for a meeting, not a last supper. He has spent the afternoon on the phone with his lawyers, discussing strategy for the commission case. This dinner is an annoyance, a distraction. It is a meeting he believes is necessary to bring Gotti's rogue crew back into line, to deal with the issue of the Ruggiero tapes once and for all. He is the boss. He will handle it. He walks down the grand staircase of his mansion where Thomas Bellotti is waiting for him, holding the keys to the black Lincoln. Bellotti opens the door for his boss. For a moment, Castellano pauses, looking back at the brilliant white house, his fortress. Then he gets into the car. The drive into Manhattan is routine. Bellotti navigates the traffic of the Staten Island Expressway and the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, the car a silent, climate-controlled bubble moving through the city's circulatory system. Castellano sits in the back, reviewing papers from a briefcase. He speaks to Bellotti about the price of poultry, about the weakness of a rival contractor. He has no idea that his movements are being tracked, that a spotter on the Verrazzano Bridge has already radioed ahead. "The Eagle is flying!" The message crackles over Gravano's walkie-talkie. As the Lincoln cruises up the Franklin D. Roosevelt Drive, the final pieces of the trap click into place. A backup car with more of Gravano's men positions itself a few blocks from the steakhouse. Frank DeChico, the Judas, calls the phone in Castellano's car, confirming the reservation time and feigning impatience. Everything is normal. Everything is as it should be. At approximately 5:26 post-meridium, the black Lincoln turns off 3rd Avenue and onto East 46th Street. Gravano raises the walkie-talkie to his lips. "They're coming down the street now," he says, his voice devoid of emotion. Across the road, the 4 men in white trench coats hear the signal on their own receivers. They subtly begin to separate from each other, positioning themselves to create a kill box. The lunchtime crowd is thinned, but the street is still busy with people heading home from work. No one notices them. No one sees the trap being sprung. The Lincoln slows, pulling into a parking spot directly in front of the restaurant's main entrance. In Gotti's car, the 2 men lean forward, their eyes fixed on the scene. This is the moment. Years of resentment, months of planning, all condensed into these final seconds. The brake lights of the Lincoln flare red. The engine is cut. A valet starts to approach. Thomas Bellotti gets out of the driver's side. Paul Castellano, the boss of bosses, reaches for the handle of the rear passenger door, ready to step out onto the cold pavement for his steak dinner. The first to die is the bodyguard, As Thomas Bellotti steps onto the curb, a figure in a white trench coat, Eddie Lino, moves toward him with an unnatural calm. Before Bellotti can even register the threat, a revolver appears. There are two flat, deafening cracks that echo off the surrounding buildings. The shots strike Bellotti in the head and chest. He collapses instantly, a heap of dark wool and lifeless flesh on the frozen sidewalk, his chance to defend his boss expiring before it ever began. For a fraction of a second, the world seems to hang in a state of suspended shock. Paul Castellano is halfway out of the rear door of the Lincoln, his large frame silhouetted against the car's interior light. His face registers a flicker of confusion, a momentary incomprehension at the sight of his protector falling. It is the last emotion he will ever feel. The other three shooters, John Carneglia among them, converge on him in a terrifyingly swift and practiced ballet of death. They form a semicircle around the open car door, their arms extended, their dark revolvers aimed directly at the boss of the Gambino crime family. The street erupts in a volley of gunfire. Muzzle flashes blink like strobes in the deepening twilight. The sound is a brutal, percussive storm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shots, fired in quick succession. The bullets tear into Castellano's head and torso. The immense power that he commanded for a decade is erased in a torrent of lead. His body is thrown back against the car, then slumps forward, falling out onto the street in a clumsy, undignified heap. A crimson stain blossoms on the front of his crisp white shirt, spreading across the expensive fabric of his suit jacket. His reign has ended here, on the dirty asphalt, his blood mingling with the winter grit. For a moment there is a stunned silence, the echoes of the gunshots fading into the city's hum. Then, chaos. A collective gasp rises from the pedestrians who have thrown themselves to the ground or scrambled behind parked cars. Screams tear through the air. Inside Sparks Steakhouse, patrons and waiters dive under tables, the sounds of shattering glass mixing with shouts of terror. The acrid smell of cordite hangs heavy in the cold air. The assassins do not run. They turn and walk away, their movements deliberate and unhurried. They melt back into the river of humanity, just 4 men in white coats and black hats disappearing into the Christmas crowd. They drop their .38 caliber revolvers on the pavement, leaving the murder weapons behind as a final, arrogant gesture. Within 30 seconds, they are gone. In the dark Lincoln down the block, Gravano lowers the walkie-talkie. His man on the ground has confirmed it. "They're both down," he says to Gotti, his voice as calm as if reporting the time. Gotti nods once, his face unreadable. "Let's go," he commands. "Take a look." Gravano starts the car. He pulls out from the curb and drives slowly, deliberately, toward the scene. He cruises past the black Lincoln, its doors still hanging open like broken wings. He slows the car almost to a stop, giving his boss a clear and unobstructed view of his handiwork. There they are, 2 bodies lying on the street in rapidly cooling pools of their own blood. Steam rises from them in the frigid air. Thomas Bellotti, the loyal driver, and Paul Castellano, the corporate CEO, the king in the white suit, now just a crumpled figure on the pavement. Gotti stares at the scene, at the face of the man he has just overthrown. There is no remorse in his eyes, only the cold fire of triumph. He has done it. He has decapitated the family and seized the crown. The street has reclaimed its own. Gravano accelerates, turning the corner and disappearing into the flow of traffic just as the first distant wail of a police siren begins to slice through the night. Within minutes, East 46th Street is bathed in the frantic, strobing chaos of red and blue lights. The first responding officers of the New York City Police Department's 17th Precinct arrive to a scene of controlled pandemonium. They establish a perimeter with yellow crime scene tape, pushing back the growing crowd of morbidly curious onlookers. The scene before them is surreal. A luxury sedan with its doors agape, 2 bodies sprawled on the pavement, and the incongruous backdrop of festive holiday decorations. Detectives from the Organized Crime Control Bureau are on the scene almost as quickly, their faces grim. They do not need a medical examiner to identify the victims. They know exactly who Paul Castellano is. This is not a robbery gone wrong. This is a message, written in blood on one of the busiest streets in the world. The execution is brazen, a public spectacle designed for maximum impact. Forensics teams begin their work under the harsh glare of portable floodlights. They photograph the bodies from every angle. They note the 6 distinct entry wounds in Castellano, the two in Bilotti. They carefully bag the discarded .38 caliber revolvers. They interview witnesses, but the descriptions are uselessly vague. 4, maybe 5 men in long coats and hats who simply vanished into the city's anonymous throngs. The news spreads through the city like a virus. By the 9 o'clock news, the story is leading every broadcast. By morning, the murder is on the front page of every newspaper. The New York Post runs a particularly gruesome photo of Castellano's body lying next to the Lincoln's open door, his white suit stained dark red. The king's undignified end is now public record for all to see. In the white mansion on Tot Hill, the federal agents listening to their bug hear only silence, the quiet hum of an empty house. The reign of the corporate boss is officially, brutally over. Miles away, in the heart of Little Italy, a new reign is beginning. A few hours after the hit, John Gotti strolls into the Ravenite Social Club on Mulberry Street as if he owns it, which he now does. The small, smoky club is packed with Gambino family soldiers and capos. They have all heard the news. The atmosphere is electric with tension, fear, and anticipation. As Gotti enters, a hush falls over the room. He is dressed in a magnificent charcoal gray overcoat, his silver hair perfectly coiffed. He is not hiding. He's not laying low. He is presenting himself. He walks to the back of the club, where Frank DeCicco and Sammy Gravano are waiting. He nods to them. It is all the confirmation they need. One by one, the capos approach him. They do not shake his hand. They reach for it, give it a respectful kiss, and pledge their loyalty. John, they say. Their voice is a mixture of deference and relief. They are paying tribute to the new king. Anyone who harbored loyalty to Castellano now understands the new reality. Fall in line or end up on the pavement yourself.